1940. Britain is being pounded by the German Blitz. Its people are demanding vengeance. But when British bombers take off to attack German cities, they hit an invisible wall of defences. Using radar to pick up the incoming British aircraft, German fighters can shoot them down with ease. The British look to be losing the war of the bombs. The German radar system has to be defeated. It's up to a handful of Britain's new paratroops to provide the key. Their action would be one of the most daring and important raids of World War II. And when it ended, Germany's radar secrets had been laid bare.
Now we had evidence. We had the fire for long range detection, the small Würzburg for anti-aircraft purposes, and the giant Würzburg for controlling night fighters.
Although victorious in the Battle of Britain, the country was soon suffering severely from the German bomber blitz. As Prime Minister Winston Churchill inspected the ruins, he was already ordering a counter. The RAF took off on punishment raids over Nazi Germany. The effect of these attacks was immediate. Adolf Hitler ordered that an air defense barrier be set up immediately, and put Luftwaffe General Josef Kammhuber in charge. Kammhuber brought together German searchlights and anti-aircraft gun defences into a line stretching from Schleswig-Holstein to Liège. This was then linked with a radar network. The Germans had already developed their own radar for offensive purposes, to guide their bombers. Now, as Britain struck back in the air, they turned to its defensive use, positioning stations along the North Sea coast of their new empire to detect any attack and guide fighters. By 1941, Kammhuber had tied all the elements together in a lethal, multi-layered aerial defense system. It started with the coastal radar stations. These picked up incoming British bombers and alerted German night fighter crews. Given precise directions by the radar stations, they could then intercept the British bombers. Those bombers that managed to get through then faced batteries of flak guns and powerful searchlights. RAF Bomber Command called it the Kammhuber Line. It cost many British lives. Too many. In the face of the German defences, only 3 RAF bomber crews out of every 10 would be sure of completing their tour of operations. It was a frightening statistic. It meant that Britain faced losing the air war if nothing could be done about it. British scientist Dr. R.V. Jones headed the team dedicated to destroying the Kammhuber Line. He knew the key to it was radar. But he faced opposition. Lord Chow, Churchill's personal scientific advisor, wouldn't believe that the Germans had perfected radar. Following the invasion of France in spring 1940, Jones insisted that the Germans had brought radar to the Channel coast. was sure that in July 1940 it had been used to detect a British destroyer that was then sunk by the Luftwaffe. But he needed proof. Intercepted German secret messages referring to a system codenamed Freya gave him a clue.
When I thought about Norse mythology, Freya was the Nordic Venus. And she had, not really sacrificed, but possibly massacred her honor to get possession of a magic necklace, which was with zinc on it. And this was removed for her by Heimdall, who was the original of the Nordic god. You see Heimdall's by day and night. What better name to see for radar?
The task of getting further concrete proof fell to the RAF's photo reconnaissance unit. A photograph of what was identified as a Freya radar station was taken on the 22nd of February 1941 by Flying Officer W.K. Manifold. Code breakers at Bletchley Park provided Jones with a further report about Freya radar.
Mommy, you look nice and slick. Oh, Mommy looks slick.
Würzburg. In the autumn of 1941, an RAF photo reconnaissance sortie returned with pictures of a Freya radar unit installed on a cliff top on the northern coast of France. It was near the village of Brunnevar, and Jones wondered whether the elusive Würzburg might be there as well.
But the question was, what did the Würzburg look like? It was probably small. I don't think it was enough to photograph. How could we find one? Now, there was at the station at Brunnevar, which is north of Le Havre, on the coast here, there was indeed a fire station. And there was a path that led from the friars to a house on the cliffs. And the friars are down here. And my colleague Charles Frank spotted that the path, which seemed at first sight to go to the house, didn't go to the house. It stopped about 20 yards short, ending in a loop. And besides the loop was a dot. Again, far too small to be resolved. And even on this photograph, which is a much closer photograph than when he took it on, you still can hardly see it, even with a magnifying glass. But anyway, there it was, and Charles Frank said, "What's that?" And we decided that there was a sporting chance it was the radar equipment we were looking for.
To double check, the second reconnaissance flight was ordered. It was carried out by Squadron Leader Tony Hill. On the 5th of December 1941, he took his Spitfire low and fast over the English Channel. The result was everything Jones had hoped for.
And he came back with just two photographs, which are the great photographs of the war. Here was the house, up there, the road had come up to here, and this place, you see, really was just like the electric boat. He took one flying past it that way for us, and then he went past and took a side view as well. And, of course, these gave us our first real sight of the Würzburg.
Having confirmed the site of a Würzburg radar station, Jones now had to find out the wavelength of this radar system. Then he could jump. By doing that, he would make the first chink in Camp Huber's aerial defense system. But he needed to get hold of the radar equipment. And this would mean penetrating Nazi-occupied Europe along part of its most heavily defended coastline. The proposal for a raid on Brunnevar was passed by Air Intelligence to Combined Operations HQ. Its chief was Lord Louis Mountbatten. He concluded that there was only one option: from the air. So the task of carrying out the raid was given to an elite crew, Britain's new parachute regiment. But this had only recently been formed, and its men had barely finished their preliminary training. Jumping out of aircraft in a raid was a brand new form of warfare for the British. On the success or failure of the Paras would depend the lives of thousands of British aircrew. It was the Soviet Army that first looked at the possibility of deploying paratroops in a series of massive exercises before World War II. The Germans had picked up on these ideas, using paratroops for raids during the invasions of Norway and Holland, and then en masse to capture the island of Crete in May 1941. British Paras began training in the summer of 1940. The initial force of 500 men grew into the 1st Airborne Division. It was commanded by Lieutenant General Sir Frederick Boy Brown. Number 2 Battalion of the division's 1st Parachute Brigade had barely completed training when it was given its first challenge, the airborne raid on Grunewald. 2 Battalion C Company was chosen for the mission. It was 120 men strong, and almost entirely made up of volunteers from Scottish regiments. C Company's commander was a tough Cameroonian, Major John Frost. C Company trained hard for what would be a very precise mission. It was not merely going in to smash up the radar system, but to retrieve vital components. The technical expert would accompany the paratroops, RAF radar operator Flight Sergeant Charles Cox. He'd been a cinema projectionist before the war, but had never been in a ship or an aeroplane. Now he had to learn how to jump out of Whitley bombers. Cox would then have to examine the Würzburg on the raid, while under fire, he would have no room for errors. The raiding party rehearsed for the mission using a scale model made by the